Today we are taking a look at the Arc Captain MIG 200, and as of this recording, this is currently available on Amazon for $369. This is actually a 6-in-1 welder, 200 amps, dual voltage, 110 and 220 volts. In this video, we're primarily going to be focusing on the MIG aspect, but we might also take a look at the stick welding capabilities. It does have some TIG functionality as well, but we don't have the torch to be able to do that in this video. And it obviously can do flex core as well, but MIG is going to be the primary focus. That's usually what I use. It's the general go-to for most fabrication. So I think that we're going to try and establish the baseline for this machine off of mostly the MIG. Just to give you guys an overview of everything that comes in the box, we do have, obviously you have your included MIG lead. This is a little bit on the smaller side, but I actually prefer a smaller torch. It's just able to get into tighter places. I actually like this. Big fan of the smaller leads. We have a nice bright display screen on here for all of our settings. We'll dive into that a little bit more in a second. It obviously comes with, you got your ground clamp as well, and your stick welding lead, and then it does come with a decent amount of extra accessories. You got extra nozzle, stuff like that, other wire rollers there. And as far as like initial impressions go before we actually run this machine, this is a budget machine obviously, but there's a few things that really stand out. As you can see, we got our compartment open, we got our MIG wire loaded up. Really random, but I've never really seen a machine that has a light on the inside. I actually really like that. I think that is a nice little touch. They have a pretty decent looking chart right here. So you guys, if you forget your settings or anything, you can always reference this. The build quality on this machine is actually pretty decent. So far, I'm very impressed. It's about toe-to-toe with other comparable machines, like more entry-level stuff. There is a little bit of flimsiness on some of the leads compared to maybe some of the more higher end welders. But that being said, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not horrible. It doesn't feel like it's going to break or anything, but there's just a little bit of like plasticky clunk when it comes to that. But I'm not going to hold the machine too much on that. I mainly want to see how it's going to run. So that's everything that it comes with. Obviously, as far as just like looks too, I do think that the machine looks nice. I do like red personally, so that is a big plus for me. It does have a nice sturdy handle on top. The only downside that I would say is, obviously we're going to be running MIG, so we're going to have gas hooked up to this. It did not come with a regulator, but as a budget entry machine, not everyone is going to be running MIG. They might be running flex core without gas, so that does play a factor there as well. And lastly, it is a dual voltage machine. You can see it plugged in over here. We're going to be testing this both on 110 and 220 because I think those are both important. Most of what I'm going to judge it off of will be the 220 portion to see really what the full potential of this machine is. But I do think it's important for those of you that don't have 220 to be able to know what to expect from the machine. All right. First weld out the gate, we're on 110 right now, and out the gate, pretty impressed so far. Pretty happy with how that is running. We're on just some scrap metal that we got here, left over from a different project, but that's looking pretty good out the gate, not gonna lie. My initial response is that I'm pretty impressed so far. Runs nice and smooth. If you just go to their chart, and obviously we're running mixed gas, we're running solid ER70 S6, we're running 035. This is like a good starting point of whatever thickness of material that you're going to start with. I usually start with these settings right here. They got voltage on the left and wire speed on the right. So that's my baseline, and then I fine tune it from there. I prefer to be on the manual settings, albeit the synergistic wasn't horrible by any means. It's just I'm a little bit more of a seasoned user, if you will, so I can see how the synergistic might actually be really nice for more of a beginner type. But I always like to, I consult their chart and then I fine tune it in on the manual settings from there. So that's usually how I get my baseline. Now that we've run it a bit on 110, I do want to pop it up to 220. We'll test both the synergistic and the regular settings on that as well. But I really want to see what 220 volts is going to do on this machine. We'll also weld some thicker material. That'll be fun to test too. Out the gate on 220, it's looking pretty good. Also keep in mind that the material that we're welding on, I didn't properly clean, and I'm doing that on purpose just because I think it gives a little bit better of understanding of how the machine's gonna weld. Obviously, if I clean these up, probably weld a little bit better. But pretty happy with what we're looking at as far as 220 goes. I'm gonna go grab some thicker pieces. Let's weld some 1/4 inch and see how it stacks up against 1/4 inch plate. All right, so we got it cranked up to 21.3 volts and 350 inches per minute. Should hopefully be a good setting for a 1/4 inch plate. We'll have to kind of dial it in and see, but I think it's gonna run good. Let's just jump into this. Well, it definitely runs hot enough on 220 volts to weld 1/4 inch plate. Once again, just want to emphasize that we did this without even cleaning any of this. So I think that looks pretty decent. Obviously, if I fiddled with it a little bit more, we could probably dial this in and get this looking even better. But out the box, pretty impressed with both thicknesses. I wouldn't really want to weld anything probably too much thicker than this. You might be able to get away with some 3/8, but as far as the limits of the machine go, I think, you know, maybe it's going to be about 1/4 inch if you're welding anything in a single pass. So pretty impressed with that. I'm judging this as a MIG machine because that is what I am going to use it for, as a MIG machine, and a MIG machine pretty much alone. Albeit I do like the versatility that it does have, the stick functionality, it does have spool gun functionality, and it does have some TIG functionality if we had the right torch to be able to test that, but I obviously do not. So who is this for? This is for more of your entry-level beginner welder fabricator. You want to start getting into it. $370 is a very affordable entry point for a dual voltage MIG machine that can do a lot of things. Obviously, we saw what it can do on 110 volts. We saw what it can do on 220. I feel more comfortable running it on 220, but the 110 was actually pretty decent. I was actually surprised with that. And that was just on a regular GFI outlet that was right here. So I didn't blow the breaker or anything. We had that when it was on the synergistic mode, cranked up to as high as it would go on 110, and it didn't blow the breaker. So that was nice. It ran decently. I was pretty impressed out the box with the MIG features. Also, to summarize, I will say that after using the torch a little bit more, as I mentioned earlier, I do like the smaller MIG torches. It just is so much more convenient, especially depending if you're going to do any sort of automotive work. I don't know if you'd be doing roll cages or anything certain like that where you have to kind of get that nozzle into a tighter space. I do like that this MIG gun is a lot smaller. So in summary, I would highly recommend this to anybody looking for more of an entry level welder. Now, what I can't speak for is the longevity of this machine and like the customer service per se, because I haven't had to go through that. But out the gate, I would like to assume that if you take care of this machine and you don't run it past its duty cycle and everything like that, then you should probably have a machine that's going to last you a long time. Welding technology has come so far, and these machines are getting cheaper and cheaper to have, and it comes with a decent amount of replacement nozzles and stuff. So with what you get, you should be ready to go. Just keep in mind that you will need a regulator. So you're going to be over the $400 mark if you plan on running solid wire with this machine, which obviously is all we did in this video. We did not run any flex core. That's just not what I would use, not what I use at all for my fabrication. So I like the solid MIG wire there. The dual voltage is really nice. So If you have to go over to a buddy's house, you have to go to maybe do a little job somewhere else and they don't have 220, depending on what you have to weld, it's really nice to have the versatility of 110 versus 220 volts. So yeah, that being said, I like the sturdiness of the machine the more I used it. The controls are nice. There is a lot of adjustability, some that we didn't even dive too deep into, because they have this, for the MIG settings, they have a hard and soft. They have a little bit of adjustability. And I don't think most people are going to really need that, but it is nice that it is there. The base settings, as far as the chart goes and everything, gets you really close. And for me, I don't like the synergistic mode quite as much, but if you're a beginner, I could see how that would be very beneficial and a good starting point. So if you don't really know what you're doing, just follow the chart, do the synergistic, and go from there. And I think you'll have some pretty decent results as far as what this machine can do. I think it's definitely very capable. Obviously, welding up to some 1/4 inch plate in a single pass says a lot about this little 200 amp machine. So that's all I have for you guys for the Arc Captain MIG 200. Great little machine. Consider picking it up. I will have a link in the description for the Amazon link if you guys want to check that out. And I'll try to link their direct website down in the description as well.